Nia Campbell, a young fashion designer from Nairobi, thought she was simply attending a party. When her ex-boyfriend, Tay, called to invite her to celebrate his success on a $10 million yacht in Cape Verde, she hesitated. Years ago, he had laughed at her dreams, telling her she'd never make it beyond dusty market stalls. But now her small brand was finally gaining attention, and curiosity got the better of her. Maybe he had changed, she thought. Maybe he wanted to make peace. So she packed a simple silk dress, took a deep breath, and boarded the glittering yacht without knowing the storm that waited for her. From the moment she stepped on deck, she felt out of place. The crowd sparkled with diamonds and designer gowns, and standing beside Tay was his new fiancée, Amara, a woman who wore her wealth like armor. Amara's sharp whispers carried easily over the music. "Not everyone belongs on luxury like this," she said with a smirk. Laughter followed, but Nia stayed calm, her pride the only thing holding her together. Then Tay raised his glass and said, to the one who couldn't keep up. Every eye turned to her. For a moment, Nia's heart sank, but she lifted her chin and smiled. She didn't know that someone else on that yacht had been watching her quietly, Gasped, the billionaire who owned the vessel. And before the night ended, the woman they mocked would become the one everyone wanted to know. The night was warm, and the sound of the ocean mixed with music and laughter. The yacht glittered with golden lights, filled with people showing off their diamonds and designer clothes. Nia stood quietly near the edge of the deck, holding a glass of juice, trying to blend in. She told herself to stay calm, but deep inside, she could feel something wasn't right. This wasn't a friendly celebration. It felt like a trap dressed up as a party. Tay, her ex-boyfriend, walked around proudly, greeting guests like a king on his throne. He was dressed in a white linen shirt, showing off his watch that probably cost more than her entire shop. Beside him stood his fiancée, Amara, a woman with beauty sharp enough to cut. Amara's eyes found Nia immediately, and her lips curled into a smirk. She leaned close to Tay, pretending to whisper, but her voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You see, darling," she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness, "not everyone belongs on a yacht like this. Some people just sneak in." The group around them laughed, the sound echoing like tiny daggers. Nia froze. Every giggle, every glance in her direction felt like a spotlight. Cameras flashed as people took pictures, probably waiting to post them later with cruel captions. She could feel her cheeks burning, but she kept her head high. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. Tay lifted his champagne glass and tapped it for attention. "A toast," he announced. "To the one who couldn't keep up." For a second, the laughter stopped. Everyone turned their eyes toward Nia. The music felt quieter, the air heavier. Nia's heart pounded, but she refused to look away. She smiled, a small, calm smile that didn't match the humiliation she felt inside. It was the kind of smile that said, "You'll regret this." Amara tilted her head and gave a mocking laugh. "Oh, she's taking it well," she said. "How adorable." Someone snickered, and Tay added, "Well, Nia always did have big dreams, didn't she? Too bad dreams don't pay for yachts." The laughter rose again, cruel and careless. But Nia didn't move. She looked around at the glittering faces and realized something important: none of these people truly mattered. They were all pretending to. Pretending to be happy, pretending to be rich enough, confident enough, important enough. She took a slow sip from her glass and let the taste of orange and pride steady her heart. What she didn't know was that her quiet strength had already caught someone's attention. A man standing near the bar, dressed in a white linen suit, had been watching her the whole time. His expression wasn't mocking, it was curious. Impressed. While others saw a woman being humiliated, he saw grace under fire. His name was Gasped, the mysterious billionaire who owned the yacht. And before the night ended, Nia would no longer be the one they laughed at, she would be the one they would never forget. The laughter on the yacht grew louder, sharp and careless like the clinking of glasses. Nia stood near the railing, staring at the dark waves below, wishing she could disappear into them. She could still hear Amara's cruel whisper and Tay's mocking toast echoing in her mind. But before another cruel joke could reach her, a calm voice broke through the noise. "You seem too graceful for this kind of circus." Startled, Nia turned. A tall man stood before her, dressed in a crisp white linen suit that caught the moonlight. His presence was quiet yet powerful, and his eyes carried a kind of calm confidence that made everyone around him fade into the background. For a second, Nia thought she'd seen him before, maybe in a magazine or on TV. Then it hit her, this was 10M Yacht, the billionaire who owned the yacht and most of the land surrounding the Cape Verde coast. People whispered stories about him, about his wealth, his power, and how he rarely spoke to anyone at social events. Yet here he was, standing in front of her, speaking softly as if they were old friends. Nia blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't mean to stand out," she said awkwardly, forcing a small smile. Cato's lips curved slightly. "Oh, but you do," he said, tilting his head. "Not for the wrong reasons." His tone was kind, almost protective, and it made Nia's heart steady for the first time that evening. When she introduced herself, his eyes lit up. "Nia Campbell," he repeated, his voice thoughtful, like he was recalling something important. "The designer who turns recycled cloth into wearable art." Nia hesitated, surprised that he knew her work. "Yes, that's me," she said softly. Cato smiled. "My sister wears your designs," he said. "She never stops talking about how you make beauty out of what others throw away. I didn't expect to meet you here, of all places." Nia's breath caught. For months she had worked quietly, stitching hope into her clothes, believing that maybe, just maybe, someone important would notice one day. And now that moment had arrived, on the same night she thought her dignity had been destroyed. Around them, the music and laughter continued, but it all felt far away. People were beginning to notice the two of them talking. Whispers spread quickly across the deck. "Is that 10M Yacht?" someone whispered. "He's talking to her." Amara's laughter stopped, and Tay's smile faded as he watched the billionaire lean closer to Nia, listening intently as she spoke about her work. For the first time that night, Nia didn't feel small. She didn't feel humiliated. She felt seen. Cato's presence was like calm water after a storm, and she could sense something shifting, not just in the air around her, but in her entire life. She didn't know it yet, but this meeting would change everything. The music slowed, and for a moment, everything on the yacht seemed to pause. Tay's laughter, which had been loud and confident all night, suddenly faded when he saw 10M Yacht standing beside Nia. The billionaire everyone whispered about, the man no one dared to approach, was now walking with her toward the upper deck. The crowd parted in silence, eyes following every step they took. Nia's heart raced, not from fear, but from disbelief. Just a few minutes ago, she had been the target of cruel jokes. Now, the most powerful man on the yacht was offering her his arm. Amara's face stiffened, her smile cracking as she leaned toward one of her friends. "Is she, someone important?" she whispered, her voice tight with confusion. Why would he talk to her? No one had an answer. Tay, watching the scene unfold, felt the heat of embarrassment crawl up his neck. He tried to laugh it off, desperate to look unfazed. "Hey Nia," he called out, forcing a grin. "Careful up there, don't fall off." A few people chuckled weakly, but it was clear no one found it funny anymore. Cato didn't even glance at him. He leaned closer to Nia and said quietly, "Let me show them who really doesn't belong here." His voice was calm but carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. Before she could ask what he meant, Cato nodded to the captain. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. Then, a single spotlight turned on, shining directly on Nia. Gasps spread through the crowd. Cato stepped forward, his tall frame commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth but powerful, "Meet the woman whose creativity has inspired my next global fashion investment." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Cameras clicked. Some people looked confused, others looked shocked. Amara's hand flew to her mouth. Tay's glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the deck. Nia stood frozen, barely able to breathe. "You mean, me?" she whispered. Kato smiled, eyes glinting. "Yes, you," he said softly. "The designer who turns waste into wonder. The world should know your name." The spotlight brightened, and for the first time, it didn't feel harsh. It felt right. The same crowd that had laughed at her minutes earlier was now watching her with awe. She could hear whispers ripple through the group, "That's her. The eco-designer from Nairobi?" And felt something powerful rising inside her. Tay's jaw clenched as he tried to smile, but it looked forced. His confidence was gone. Amara stepped back, her face pale, realizing the man she had just mocked was now standing beside the very woman her fiancé had tried to humiliate. Kato looked at Nia again and said softly, "Sometimes, people need a little reminder of what real class looks like." And as the music began again, everyone on that yacht understood one thing clearly: Nia Cambale was no longer the guest they could laugh at. She was the woman they would never forget. The murmurs rolled across the deck like distant thunder, a low wave of surprise and doubt that made the music feel small. Tay tried to recover his swagger with a scoff, loud enough so people could hear him. "You can't be serious, Kato." "Her. She's just," his voice broke on the last word, eaten by the sudden hush that fell over the crowd as Kato turned slowly, eyes steady, and reached for Nia. He did not rush. He moved with a kind of calm everyone recognized as power. Before anyone could decide what to do, he pulled Nia gently into his arms and kissed her. It was not a showy, clumsy kiss. It was deliberate and soft and public in a way that felt like a verdict. The world stopped. People leaned forward like they were trying to catch a secret. Phones rose and cameras flashed, but this time their light did not sting. It warmed. The laughter that had once been sharp went quiet, replaced by a new sound, an intake of breath that seemed to come from the whole yacht at once. Amara's hand flew to her mouth, her champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the deck, a single crack that sounded too small for the moment. Tay's face went the color of a man who had been cut free from his pride and watched it sink. For the first time all night, he looked smaller than the joke he had tried to make. People who had been smirking a minute before now watched with open eyes, trying to make sense of the turn. Some whispered about scandal, others about romance, but most felt the shock of a truth laid bare: the man everyone thought untouchable had just chosen the woman everyone had mocked. Kato stepped back, keeping his hand on Nia's arm like a promise and a shield at once. He did not shout or brag. He only said, cool and clear, "Mock her again, and I'll make sure you're blacklisted from every business in this city." The words landed heavier than any shout. They were not a threat shouted in anger, they were a calm decision that carried weight. Conversations died. The small circle of privileged people who had been enjoying themselves like rulers of the night looked suddenly exposed. Nia felt the world tilt in a new way. Where humiliation had been moments before, there was now a strange peace that felt like sunlight after rain. She could hear the press of footsteps as people shifted to get a better view. She could feel the eyes on her, true curiosity and not cruelty. She tasted salt and the sweet tang of champagne on her lips and felt a quiet laugh bubble up inside her chest, soft and surprised. She had come to what she thought would be a trap, and instead she'd walked into a moment that rewrote the room. The cameras would carry the image everywhere. The gossip would follow. But in that exact second, under the dimmed lights and the hush of waves against the hull, what mattered most was simple and sharp: someone powerful had seen her, had chosen her, and had turned the laughter into silence. The sun was slowly melting into the horizon, turning the sea gold as the yacht sailed smoothly across the water. The chaos and whispers from earlier had faded into silence. Most of the guests had retreated below deck, pretending to be busy, afraid to meet Kato's eyes after what had happened. On the upper deck, the air was calm, and the only sounds were the waves and the soft hum of the ocean breeze. Nia sat quietly beside Kato, her heart still racing from everything that had unfolded. It all felt unreal, the humiliation, the kiss, the sudden shift of power. She kept wondering if she had dreamed it. Kato poured her a glass of water and said gently, "I imagine this evening didn't go how you expected." His tone wasn't teasing, it was warm, steady, and sincere. Nia gave a small laugh. "That's an understatement," she said, looking out at the sunset. "I came here thinking I was walking into another of Tay's games. I just didn't know the ending would be this dramatic." Kato smiled at that, the kind of smile that held more truth than words. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a slim black folder, sliding it toward her. "Do you know why I was on this yacht tonight?" he asked. Nia shook her head. "To make an entrance," she joked softly. He chuckled. "Not quite. I was supposed to meet a designer named Nia Campbell this week. A woman whose work had caught the attention of my company months ago. We've been watching your brand grow, your creativity, your designs, your message. You've built something powerful with almost nothing." Nia froze, her eyes wide. We're going to meet me?" Kato nodded. "Yes. I had planned a quiet business dinner. But after what I saw tonight, how they tried to break you, how you stood your ground, I decided to make it memorable." He gestured toward the folder. "Open it." Her hands trembled slightly as she did. Inside were documents with her name printed in bold letters. She read the first few lines and felt her breath catch. It was a partnership agreement, between her brand and Beale Group. Kato had signed it already. "This gives you 40% ownership in our new joint luxury line," he explained. "It will be called NIA by Beale Group. You'll lead the creative vision. I'll handle the global expansion." Nia's eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. "Why me?" she whispered. Kato looked at her, his voice soft but firm. "Because I like investing in brilliance that refuses to break. You didn't let their cruelty change who you are. That's what I look for, not just talent, but strength." Nia closed the folder, holding it against her chest, her heart full. The same sunset that had started as the backdrop to her humiliation now glowed behind her victory. For the first time, she didn't feel like a guest on someone else's yacht. She felt like she belonged there. By the next morning, the world was buzzing. The sun had barely risen, but every phone screen was already glowing with one headline after another: "Mystery designer wins billionaire's heart." Photos of Kato kissing Nia under the soft yacht lights had gone viral overnight. The moment had spread like wildfire, shared, reposted, and dissected by millions. People were calling it everything from a fairy tale to a power move. Every news outlet wanted to know more about the woman who had stolen both the spotlight and the billionaire's heart in one night. Nia's name was suddenly everywhere. Her Instagram followers jumped by hundreds of thousands in hours. Fashion pages praised her designs, calling her the voice of modern African luxury. Others called her the girl who turned humiliation into history. Meanwhile, gossip blogs tried to dig up details about her past, but all they found was a story of hard work, patience, and quiet determination. The world loved her authenticity. For Tay, the story took a cruel turn. Overnight, his shining reputation began to crumble. Brands that once lined up to work with him quickly pulled their sponsorships, not wanting to be associated with the man caught mocking a woman who had just been celebrated by one of the world's most powerful businessmen. His PR team tried to spin the story, but the damage was too deep. Memes flooded social media, his smug yacht toast turned into a global joke. One even read, "To the one who couldn't keep up. Seems like that's you now, Tay." Amara vanished from the picture completely. She deleted her social accounts and reportedly left Tay within a day. People said she couldn't handle the humiliation, but others whispered that she had simply realized she'd chosen the wrong side of history. The internet was merciless, and every cruel word they had spoken to Nia came back like a mirror turned on them. But Nia didn't say a word. She didn't post angry messages or interviews. She didn't clap back at anyone. Instead, she posted one simple photo, her hand sewing a delicate gold thread through soft fabric, the caption reading, "They laughed when I stitched dreams together. Now, they wear them." The post went viral instantly. Celebrities shared it. Fashion magazines quoted it. Even people outside the fashion world felt something in her words. It wasn't loud revenge. It was quiet, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Reporters waited outside her small Nairobi studio, cameras flashing, calling her the designer of destiny. Yet Nia stayed calm. She smiled politely, waved once, and went back to work. She didn't need to shout her success, the world was already echoing her name. As the noise grew louder, one truth became clear: the girl they had mocked for her cheap fabrics had become a symbol of grace, power, and poetic justice. And as Tay watched the world celebrate her, he finally understood what true success looked like. It was the kind that didn't need revenge. It simply shined. Months later, the city of Johannesburg buzzed with excitement. Cameras flashed, reporters filled the streets, and a red carpet stretched toward a shining glass building with one name glowing above the entrance, NIA by Mbeel Group. Inside, the walls were lined with her designs, bold, elegant pieces made from the same recycled fabrics she once stitched by hand in her small Nairobi apartment. Every detail reflected her journey, from struggle to triumph. Nia Kambale stood at the entrance in a sleek golden dress she'd designed herself, her smile calm but full of pride. Beside her stood Kato, looking proud but keeping a respectful distance. He wasn't there as her savior, he was her business partner, her equal. When the reporters gathered around, microphones in hand, one of them asked, "Nia, what's the biggest lesson success has taught you?" She paused, glanced at Kato, and smiled softly. "Sometimes," she said, her voice clear and steady, "you have to let them laugh first, so they can choke on the silence that follows." The crowd erupted in applause, flashes of light filling the air like tiny stars. Everyone could feel the weight of her words. They weren't just about revenge, they were about strength, patience, and dignity. Nia's story had become an anthem for dreamers everywhere, a reminder that grace could win louder than anger ever could. Somewhere far away, in a quiet room with the TV on, Tay watched the broadcast. The same woman he once called too small for luxury now owned an empire. Her name was shining across cities and magazines. He turned off the screen, but her words stayed with him, echoing in his silence. Nia hadn't just risen, she had become untouchable.